Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in welcoming our webcast viewers. My name is Fred Mifflin, President of the Canadian Club of Toronto. Viewers, we're very pleased that you're joining us today. For 120 years, our club has provided a forum for decision makers and opinion leaders to share their ideas with us and to challenge our thinking. Through our programs and activities, we offer access to dynamic business, political, and public figures from across Canada and around the world. Our legal experts and our panel discussion today are a great example. Before I formally introduce them, here's a preview of some of our upcoming events. This Tuesday, April 4th, Ontario's Transportation Minister, the Honourable Stephen Del Duca, will discuss the province's plans for delivering 21st century transportation. And the following day, Wednesday, April 5th, the Chair of Colleges Ontario and President of Northern College, Fred Gibbons, will discuss the future of college education in Ontario as they celebrate their 30th anniversary. To order your tickets or to learn more about the club, please visit our website at canadianclub.org. You can also join the conversation via Twitter and Instagram by following us at CDNCLUBTO or by using that hashtag. I want to express special thanks to today's event sponsors: Borden Ladner Gervais, represented by Philippe Tardif; McCarthy Tetreault, represented by Paul Boniferro; and Tories, represented by Les Viner. Thank you for your generous support. I also want to recognize the young leaders who are with us today, representing Osgoode Hall Law School and the University of Toronto Faculty of Law. And please don't start a tort war or bun throwing between the two tables, but welcome. We're glad that you're here. And now our panelists. Earlier this week, we hosted the country head of Google, and the entire discussion was about change, disruption, technology, and dislocation. So you actually wonder why anybody wanted to come. But it was from one of the prime disruptors in the world today. However, these are descriptors that not just impact companies like Google. No matter what sector or industry, they are heavily influencing our approach to business today. From economic globalization to the way companies procure legal advice, to the availability of online legal resources, to the internalization versus outside purchase decision, the times are certainly tumultuous in the legal world. We're pleased to have three top in-house legal experts here today to unpack how disruption is changing the legal profession. Simon Fish is Executive Vice President and General Counsel of BMO Financial Group. Simon is responsible for BMO's legal, regulatory, and compliance affairs. He's a member of the bank's executive committee and also chairs the bank's Reputation Risk Committee and the Environmental, Social, and Corporate Governance Committee. Melissa Kennedy is Executive Vice President, Chief Legal Officer, and Public Affairs of Sun Life Financial. Melissa oversees Sun Life's global legal, compliance, corporate secretarial, and corporate and public affairs functions. Prior to Sun Life, she was Senior Vice President, General Counsel, and Corporate Affairs of Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan. Av Maharaj is Vice President, Corporate and Legal Affairs of Kraft Heinz Canada. Av was appointed to his current role this year. Prior to Kraft Heinz, he was counsel at Fasken Martineau. He's also held senior positions at the Kellogg Company, including Chief Counsel and Corporate Secretary and Vice President International Legal. Our moderator, Jean Cumming, is Editor-in-Chief and Market Director of Lexpert, published by Thomson Reuters. Jean has also appeared as a legal television journalist on shows like CBC News World's Morning News and Steve Pakin's The Agenda. As I mentioned at the outset, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like addressed, please fill out one of the Q&A cards on your tables and one of our staff will collect them. So without further ado, panelists and Jean, welcome. Canadian Club of Toronto's podium is yours.
Terrific. So, Terrific. And on behalf of my colleagues and I, we are pleased to be here. And I trust that all our mics are working, and if they're not, you'll flag us down. So we've mentioned the question cards. I have an infinite quantity of questions here. So unless you want to sit here and listen to all of these, you will forward some questions. So I encourage you to do that. So we've had a very fulsome introduction, but I'm going to turn it to the panelists to ask them to tell us something about the way in which their department or their portfolio works that would be most helpful for you to understand the context in which they work. And I'm going to turn to the middle. So to Melissa Kennedy, and the Executive VP and Chief Legal Officer and Public Affairs, Sun Life Financial. Tell us about your departments.
I was trying to figure out actually how many people we had. So I think globally with all the departments that I oversee is approximately 600. Sun Life operates in 12 countries around the world, 22 different businesses. So we've got legal and compliance in all of those businesses. I'm also a member of the executive team, report to the CEO, and sit on a number of our boards, such as the China joint venture, our asset management company, and Bentel Kennedy. Not unlike my colleagues, we are technically accountable for the legal and compliance, but as senior executives, we're actually, our real personal day-to-day job is far more tilted to the strategy of the entire business.
Thank you. Simon Fish, as General Counsel of BMO Financial Group, what comes under your purview?
So in the main, it's all things legal, regulatory, and compliance. I have a couple of interesting additions to that. It includes the Privacy Office, the Office of the Ombudsman, sustainability or ESG, and they may have started off as small additions. I spend an extraordinary amount of time actually on those additional aspects of the role. But as Melissa explained, a large part of the day is really spent in broad general management and strategic matters and things that affect the bank generally.
As VP Corporate and Legal Affairs, Kraft Heinz Canada, what comes into your jurisdiction?
Largely similar to my colleagues, obviously all things legal. Ethics and compliance also falls under my group. Regulatory matters as well, and on the corporate affairs side, basically anything external facing. Compliance is the other thing we keep a close eye on as well.
So my colleague Jennifer Brown from Thomson Reuters and I, we tried to come up with an interesting factoid yesterday that encapsulates the rise of in-house counsel. And there were so many that we couldn't pick one. But it does seem that you folks are in the lead, whether it's on the transactional side or regulation or compliance. Can you tell us a bit about what's different from your role to external counsel? Simon, I'm going to start with you.
Well, of course, there's a great deal of similarity. I mean, people immediately assume that they're different roles. I like to say we're lawyers too. We're still part of the same profession, and we still share the same values and motivations that we had when we got into the profession at the outset. But in terms of the differences, many of you have heard or certainly may have read someone who I regard as the foremost thinker in this area, and that's Ben Heinemann. And he talks about the partner-guardian role of the general counsel. That is the partner to the business and also the guardian of the institution or the corporation. Or as we like to refer to it in BMO Legal, we talk about serving the customer and protecting the bank or protecting the brand. And at first blush, they might seem the different ends of the same spectrum, and we have to juggle that. But in fact, I think if you get it right, you'll find that the two notions are not mutually exclusive. If you serve the customer correctly, you'll do so in a manner that also serves the bank or serves the brand or protects the corporation. That might be at the heart of it. perhaps the biggest difference that I had to learn, perhaps when moving from private practice into in-house practice. I'll pause there.
Thank you.
I'm sure others
So,
have views.
picking up on Simon's point that you're lawyers too, and that you're on a spectrum, how does that spectrum operate together?
Well, I think in-house is a little different, and we're a little more on the business end of the spectrum. I mean, no disrespect to my colleagues that are in firms. I think my role is a little different from Simon. Simon once actually told me that his department is the manufacturing facility of the bank. I mean, they're the ones that create their products. I think you said that to us at lunch at one point, Simon.
There are times at which I want to deny that.
But I think that's important. For me, there's a stark reality because we are a manufacturer of food, a producer of food. My CEO doesn't really care about the law in and of itself. They care about the translation of those services into moving the business forward. And so on that spectrum, you really are looking at moving the business from where you are now to where it wants to be. And you really need to be mindful of that nobody cares about section whatever of this or the act of whatever that, but rather, how do you use that to accomplish your goals?
So, Melissa, picking up on what I was saying, how do you juggle that with your training and expertise that says, actually, I do care about section whatever it is, as well as care about the business?
So I would totally agree with Av. The business does not want to hear how you got to the answer. We find it all very intellectually fun, particularly with our external counsel, but one of the biggest differences you learn when you go in-house is they don't care about the journey. At all, which is horrifying to all of us who are steeped in due process and the journey. But that's one of the biggest difference. I look at our relationship with external counsel as a partnership. You have retained the expertise in many things I've completely forgotten about. So you are the external experts, but we're the ones who understand the risk culture within the organization, and depending upon what business you're talking about, the risk culture is different. So it is a necessary relationship, and one as far as the future of law, I don't see that changing at all.
Melissa, I'm going to stay with you for a minute. Everyone in this room will have read with different degrees of glee about computers or robots replacing lawyers. Do you have an actual example of technical innovation that is now or will in the near future replace lawyers?
So, so digital innovation, artificial intelligence, that is the internal speak of all of our companies. It is something that we're all focused on. When you see headlines, what was it? Something I read where CEOs 5 years ago hadn't thought about their mobile platform, they failed today. And if CEOs are not thinking about artificial intelligence today, in 5 years they will have failed. So that has really focused a lot of our business people and our executive teams. I must confess, the first time I saw the headline, JP Morgan had a headline that it had a computer replace 360,000 hours of lawyers' time, and my executive team members gleefully sent me the article saying, and so my response to that is, after 8+ years of post-secondary training and all the resources we as lawyers take out of society, if we are producing a product that can be replaced by a robot, and then I say good. So it is, artificial intelligence is, and the technology is something that we are all embracing within our groups, and actually we're going live in 2 weeks within Sun Life, our legal department, with a brand new technology that we've been working on as a project for 2 years.
Simon, bankers are leaders on this front. Is there a specific example that you can point to, either with the legal profession or another profession, where we're being replaced?
Yes, I mean, we have been using technology for some time, in its most, from its most primitive state. And I feel this is something that one has to be involved in as the technology itself evolves. I don't think there's much to be gained by waiting until one really has, clearly useful technology for the profession. I think if you're not in it, you'll miss the opportunity to really appreciate how it can be used. I have a team of 650 professionals, but if it was reduced to 2 people, the 2 that I would keep my chief operating officer, who does everything for me, and I would keep my head of knowledge management, who is responsible for innovation and the use of the technology that we use. So, for example, we use what's called technology-assisted review of e-discovery, which the firms have been doing for a decade or 2, but law departments have not, and we've been at it for about 10 years. But everything from case management to early assessments to legal holds, all of that is now entirely automated, and through to things like things that have been technology dubbed GRC, governance, risk, and compliance technology platforms, essentially a large legal library in which every regulation that regulates every aspect of banking is recorded, stored, plain language, put in a form that individual bankers can find easily, understand what governs their particular activity, and which we can then monitor for compliance and reporting purposes.
So Simon, I'm going to push you a little bit on this, because I know you're very experienced at these panels, so you can take it. Let's put this into a context that the folks in this audience can understand. So, and I'm going to overstate this for the purpose of the question. So you're developing knowledge management.
Right.
The law firms that are represented here are developing knowledge management. Are the clients paying twice for that knowledge management that's coming up, or are the client and the firm working together?
So, I think the answer is I don't think so. And of course, we work both sides, I think, work very hard to ensure that we don't. I think the firms are cognizant and are sensitive to this. And of course, we're a lot more sensitive around the rates and the costs that we carry. I think what we're starting to see, and I'm sure this will become stronger over time, is far greater collaboration between the corporate clients like ourselves and the law firms in the use of technology, in the use of processes which become automated in that area, to ensure that we actually, we're not guilty of the point that you're making, but more importantly, that the revenue side of the relationship is advanced.
Thank you. So this is very exciting. As a journalist, you don't very often get to say, this just in. But we've got a brilliant question here. And so I'm going to turn this to Av, but I'm going to get all 3 of you to answer this. What are some of your biggest challenges in dealing with your board of directors? Wasn't my question.
Well, I can speak of the Canadian board of directors. I think the more important for us is the global board of directors that we deal with, of which Warren Buffett is one, and then the 3G umbrella which we operate. The biggest challenge for us is we are an amalgam of 2 major iconic brands. Getting them to understand who we are. I mean, I think Warren gets it, ultimately. I'm actually going to their shareholder meeting in a little while, so that'll be an interesting experience. But they really need to understand food in a very different way, our industry in a different way. And it's very much an education process. The board really needs, you really need the support of the board. And if you don't have the support of the board, it can be a very, very bumpy road, as we all know. And so ultimately, what you need to do is be able to translate the complexities of your business and what you're trying to accomplish in a very, very short time and a very easy way. So those are some of the challenges we face.
Thank you. Simon or Melissa, would you like to jump in there?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Sure. So interestingly, I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but what we're doing with our board that I'm the sponsor of is applying process engineering to how we develop the agenda, the materials, and the reporting to the board. So we have within Sun Life global teams that we call the Brighter Way. Yes, life's brighter under the sun. And the Brighter Way is the Lean Six Sigma analysis that's applied to processes. So we decided to, with the support of the board and management and the CEO, to apply the process engineering to how we're doing the whole board process. Because with a complex company that we have, so many different businesses, differing businesses, insurance, wealth, and asset management, the reporting is much different. So that's an interesting use of technology, and
Thank you. Thank you for that. Simon?
I don't have any problems at all. I have a very intelligent board, and they take their instructions and they follow them to the T.
Sounds like job security right there.
I was going to say, okay, then Simon, since your life is so easy, since your life is so easy, Simon, here's some more questions. And this person has said, from a University of Toronto law student, what is the most important change you think law schools should make to better prepare students and new lawyers for the changing legal market? Simon?
It's an excellent question. I think the practice, or there are aspects of the practice of law that have certainly changed from the time I graduated, and certainly many other of the senior partners in the room today. And the practice of law, both as inside counsel and also in private practice, has changed. There are a number of interesting courses that are being taught by the business schools. Ken Fredine is here, and he leads one of those programs that is designed to actually supplement what I will call core losses that you can't get past, but really help in learning what I perhaps may call applied law, which none of us really have enough of, I think, when we're young graduating law students. Specifically, what are the sorts of topics that one can learn? One can start learning about management a lot earlier. I feel that even senior lawyers that are in our own group have got to their positions because they are expert lawyers. They are subject matter experts. They're very capable in the area in which they practice. And then you give them a team of 5 guys to manage, and they're appalling. I exaggerate a little bit to make the point. But it's something that we're assumed to be good at because we're good litigators or we're good deal lawyers. And when given, I think, the additional responsibility of managing a group of individuals, making sure that they're aligned with their behaviors are aligned with the overall strategies of an organization. There are some who get that innately, but in the main, it's a taught skill, and so that would be something that I think would benefit all young lawyers.
Terrific. Thank you very much. We've got a flood of questions coming in.
Okay.
So that preparatory phone call that we had, that's gone by the wayside. So turning over to Melissa. Historically, there has been a close relationship between client and external law firms. What are your views on the growing options of alternative legal service providers and how law firms will work with new players to maximize value for your business?
Oh, I think that will continue to grow. We are being pushed internally, rightfully so, to manage our external legal spend budget, and looking at various areas where you don't need external specialists. You might have alternative legal services to be able to provide, and then the law firms, quite frankly, are embracing that. So I don't see that as a competition for law firms. I think it's an area that the law firms can develop into and have been for the last number of years.
Thank you. Do you expect that in-house legal departments will also be downsized because of technology and costs?
Yes.
Expand.
Moving on. No, so I think it is part and parcel technology and part of its cost. I come from like I said, a very interesting corporate environment. But on the technology front, what I was mulling over is changes in technology have always existed. You know, a great example is one of our plants. It's in Montreal, just outside of Montreal, and I think at the turn of the 20th century, we employed about 4,000 people that did about an eighth of the stuff in that building. Now we do 1,000 people that do way more stuff. And if you notice, technology's always happened. It's happened in our profession. It started with the typewriter, then we switched to computers, fax machines. Who even knows how to use a fax machine anymore? The internet, like if somebody wants to know how many weeks notice you have to give somebody in Employment Standards Act, Google, right? I mean, Google's your first AI invention and nobody talks about it. And so all that lower level stuff has gone. So it's a progression. So I do think you're starting to see reductions from that perspective. With respect to corporate perspectives, yeah, we're starting to see law departments no longer that, the comment I made to Paul over there, which is we're no longer considered voodoo doctors. And we no longer think that there's this amorphous thing you put into legal, they do some magic and out it comes. You're like any other part of the business. You're in many ways a cost center, and the business just mandates X, Y, and Z cost reductions. And if you kick and scream, it doesn't matter. And so you're actually seeing cost reductions. You're saying, I'm willing to take the risk, the business is willing to take that risk, and many times nothing happens.
Okay, Simon or Melissa, do you want to weigh in on that or just put your proxy with Av there?
Here's my proxy.
Oh, yeah, I just got mine too.
I thought as much. So speaking of technology, I'm going to give you all a bit of homework, and it's very short and quick, but Herman Melville wrote a wonderful short story called The Scrivener, and everyone should read The Scrivener if you want to learn about the beginning of legal technology, because we used to have Scriveners before the Gestetner, there were Scriveners. Wow. Anyway, apropos of that, so someone has asked a question, and it mentions my employer's competitor, but I am honor-bound to ask the question as it is put. So, how do your companies, we would say, view vendors of legal research platforms like LexisNexis? And is there any pressure to change to rising competitors like Google or IBM? Simon.
You know,
and I work for Thomson Reuters.
I understand.
That's the question.
So I'll answer in generalities then. I think, in short, as a necessary part of a whole suite of legal service providers, you know, I think the relationship between a traditional law firm and a traditional corporate client is changing at both ends. There's no question about it. The profession as a whole is changing, but the relationship is changing. And it's neither changing for the better or for the worse. I think that's simply the reality. There are now more alternative legal service suppliers in the market than there were before. And that, coupled with technology, is something that we actually have to grasp and seize the opportunity rather than anything else. So I think the relationship is going to be defined more as a melding of law, technology, processes, and collaboration. And I mean it in the sense that we haven't used that word before. Truly collaborating on projects and so on. Av referred at the outset to one of my favorite metaphors when I think of my role at the bank is slightly different from the role I had when I was in oil and gas and mining. Earlier in my career, I worked for organizations where I would say we were in the business of manufacturing and selling petroleum products, or we were in the business of manufacturing and selling metal products. Banking, and I think financial services generally, I think we can say we're in the business of manufacturing and selling contracts. Now, we don't call them contracts. We would never make any money that way. We call them notes, we call them loans, we call them deposits, we call them derivatives, but they're all contracts. Essentially, they are a legal creation. So every day I go to work, I put on some blue overalls, I go down to the assembly line, I have my team there. My compliance officers have white coats on and clipboards, and they make sure that what we're manufacturing, we make and sell safely. That's their job. And if I can shorten the assembly line from research and development to distribution, if I can shorten that, because that's working capital, that's all tied up in there quicker, and I can have more assembly lines this way, the more productive I can be. Now, I'm not going to do all of that.
Simon,
That's where I look to
I'm going to interrupt you there because that's a wonderful answer, and I'm going to. Don't worry. I want you to say more. On that assembly line.
Sorry. Yes.
On that assembly line, do you care whether the inputs are coming from law firms in some cases or accounting firms?
Do I care or ought I not to care?
No.
Yes.
I should rephrase
It's a
the
great
question.
question. It is a good question.
It doesn't make a difference, is really the question, not whether you care or not.
No, is the answer. Because both will apply their particular skill sets and will take their position on the assembly line in the appropriate place. I'm not going to go to my preferred counsel for advice that I'm going to get from an accounting firm, and for the accounting firms, I'm not going to go to them for my legal advice. That's notwithstanding that many of the accounting firms are straying into the space. I don't think they're at a point where they're competing on a value basis with the law firms yet, and I'm not sure that they ever will, because of, going back to that question, of the intervention of other third parties.
Thank you, and thank you for bearing with the interruption. So someone has written, this has got to be a lawyer, someone has written 2 questions very neatly in the space of one, and that will take us very neatly to the time allotted. So I'm going to turn to Melissa. When it comes to legal change, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, that's fair. What keeps me up at night? I am quite worried about the regulatory winds that are going around the world globally. I think we all are, both as citizens of the world, but also with respect to our particular businesses. They conflict with each other, they're inconsistent, and at times they're incoherent. So navigating a global company through that can be quite tricky. Challenging, interesting, fun at times, but tricky.
Thank you. And this question has come up again, and so I'd like to have it answered again. What advice would you have for law students and young lawyers during this interesting time? Av?
Get as many varied experiences as you can. Learn a business. Learn the language of business. The thing that frustrates me with young lawyers right now is if I'm dealing with articling students, summer students, whatever it is, they don't understand my business. So I want you to spend some time understanding that. But they actually don't understand numbers. And when we were all external counsel, it was always the client's fault. Don't take liability for numbers. I told everybody, right? But once you get in-house, if you don't understand how to read financial statements, you don't understand the implications of your actions on the financial statements, you are not going to be able to be an effective counsel. We are dealing with a couple issues right now that we actually had the CFO asking us which accounting method we should be using. And I'm like, okay, that's a little too much. But at the same time, it is a recognition that we as an organization, a legal organization, knew their language and they were willing to look at us as partners. And that's a critical thing for young lawyers. Learn the business, learn numbers.
Okay, so let's stay with that as we close. For each of the 3 of you, you have moved so successfully and so brilliantly into in-house roles where numbers are important. What is a piece of advice that you would give for either the young lawyers or, as I suspect, their parents who are in this audience? What is the way in which they can acquire either numeracy or business knowledge? For any of the 3 of you.
So I'm going to answer it a little differently. I totally agree numbers, and I had to learn it organically. What I would do if I was a young lawyer or a law student is I would understand technology and digital, because in the future of law is going to include a huge competitive fight for those unicorns who understand both the legal aspect but also are digitally really curious. You know, we're told that in 5 years' time, none of us are going to be using smartphones. Okay, I have no idea. My brain cannot fathom what it is going to be, but it's going to be different, and we'll all be using it. But finding those unique talents who are curious about technology and have the legal training, and quite frankly, in all of our businesses, actuaries and technology, accountants and technology, those are the real unicorns in my view of the future.
Simon?
So I agree entirely. I think having a sense of a great deal of understanding, if not mastery in all of these areas will be essential. For me, the differentiator between two excellent young lawyers will be the one that shows a sense of imagination. I think it's always been thus. I think it will always remain thus. The person who has imagination is the person who's more likely to be able to find that solution and serve the business.
Thank you. So, to Melissa Kennedy, Simon Fish, and Av Maharaj, thank you very much. And now I turn it over to Michael Bach.
Thank you so much, Jean. My name is Michael Bach. I'm a director of the Canadian Club of Toronto. I'm not a lawyer. However, I feel very at home in this room, as I'm rarely very far from a lawyer for what I feel are obvious reasons. Thank you so much to Av, Melissa, and Simon for coming on this panel today. I was scribbling down notes about the themes that were coming out, and two buzzwords really stick out for me, and that is innovation and disruption. It's a really interesting time to be in this profession of law because it is changing so rapidly, just as the world is changing so rapidly. Melissa, I'm terrified that I'm going to lose my smartphone. What will I do on the subway? But I remember my first phone, and the children in the room will not know this, but it was the size of a shoe. It had a bag. So to think that some 2 years later, phones have changed dramatically, and what's going to happen next. And so I think the profession is very much doing that. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, for sharing what you're doing in your own organizations to innovate and disrupt. Thank you, Jean, for, I have to admire a moderator who prepares her panel meticulously and tosses it out the door. Because there is nothing that lawyers might like more than being surprised. So thank you so much for being here and for asking questions, the tough questions, and facilitating. And I think, if you ever want a career in TV, I can see it. A little talk show, little Oprah thing, I can see it. Before we conclude, let me extend, on behalf of the board, our thanks to our three sponsors, McCarthy Tétrault, Borden Ladner Gervais, and Torys for your sponsorship of this event. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's event. To learn more about the Canadian Club, please visit our website at canadianclub.org. Thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you at a future event. Thank you.